Hi, everyone, and welcome to AfroTech's Gaming and the Genesis of the Metaverse session. I'm very excited to be here today with two industry experts, Erin Ashley Simon and Chris Barber, to discuss the metaverse. So I'm Mary Spio. I'm the founder and CEO of Seek VR. I'm a deep space scientist. I currently run Seek, the company that I founded, and the Seek Metaverse enables music artists and creators in general to be able to monetize their content in the metaverse through NFTs, through live events, and also through unique VR and AR experiences. Also on the board of Oculus VR for Good and on Amazon's board for Launchpad. So super excited to have this conversation here today. Aaron is the co-founder of XSET, which is an esports team. Aaron is also a gaming and entertainment host, and Chris is the director of AR content, business development, and partnerships at Meta. Chris leads the Meta AR developer platform, working with camera effects. And prior to that, Chris was also head of partnerships at Meta Studios. And way before that, Chris also was the lead digital global strategies for Adidas. So now I'll let our panelists talk a little bit about themselves. So if Aaron, you could share your journey into um, esports and then also into the metaverse and how you got to where you are today. And then the same with Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. And how I got into it, I've always been a gamer my entire life. That's been something that has always been a passion point for me. And eventually, I started in traditional media and traditional sports, worked in the music industry, and then made my way over into gaming as a broadcaster. But then it's developed a little more from there. So I've been, in addition to the broadcasting work that I do in the esports and gaming space, I'm also part of the ownership and executive team for XSET. And a lot of what we're doing is kind of that cross intersectional space between gaming and pop culture. And it's really interesting because the metaverse and Web3 and all of those conversations around that are very much intertwined with pop culture and gaming. It's probably the best intersection within the gaming space. And so I've been diving a little bit more into that through the work that I do through EXA and then also personally as well.
Excellent. And Chris, what about yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Mary, and nice to be here with you, Aaron. So my path to Meta was, as you noted, from Adidas prior to joining Meta 11 years ago, and at Adidas is where I first had the opportunity to truly take advantage of, on behalf of a brand, the tremendous opportunities that the emerging internet was bringing into the world. I won't date myself, but I'm going back into kind of the pre-mobile era when I was leading digital marketing for Adidas. And that opportunity to really be at the forefront of defining how people and brands build relationships through technology was really exciting. That led me to Meta again 11 years ago. And since that time, I've been working at this intersection of businesses, developers, brands, and technology as an enabler for relationships. And of course, held firmly within that is a belief that the relationships that we have between ourselves and the people around us are the strongest relationships, and enable us to have deeper and broader relationships with the companies who bring goods and services into our lives that are important.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thank you both for joining us today. So there's so much talk about the metaverse now. Why do you think there's all this talk now? Because there's been Roblox and Fortnite and Second Life, and there's been a lot in terms of the metaverse, right? I would say Metaverse 1.0 or 2.0 even. Why do you think there's so much talk now?
Sure, I'll jump in. Well, we like to think about the metaverse as the next evolution of the internet, right? We've lived in the era of the mobile internet for some time now, and the natural kind of sway of the kind of experiences that people want to have are increasingly more immersive. You think about text as a medium for communication and what that enables us, the kinds of shared experiences we can have through written text. And then, we emerged into photo being a medium for even more immersive ways for us to share our lives with one another and to participate in each other's lives. Now we're firmly in the era where video is accomplishing much of how we have shared in immersive experiences. So we believe that the next evolution of that is an internet that is immersive. So instead of looking at the internet, you're actually within the internet, and that you're able to therefore have even stronger personal relationships and connections with folks. So the timing is kind of right for the technology to evolve to a point where these kinds of experiences are possible. We're not quite there for that in the fullness of that vision, but we're very close. And gaming, of course, is one of the use cases, if you will, that in which we're seeing some of the earliest light of these kind of experiences.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that anytime we talk about metaverse, I always say and tell people gaming was already ahead of the curve when it came to that. It was the industry that was really trying to expand the consumers' experiences when it came to utilizing the games themselves. I mean, even now, not only are we looking at AR and VR, but also, a lot more is being implemented when it comes to 3D audio and having that audio experience be more dynamic than it was previously. And so, that interconnectivity, that immersion is something that is being utilized in so many different shapes and forms in gaming, that we're seeing others outside of it taking it into a whole nother level. I think, even for the example of seeing Travis Scott, having his whole concert in Fortnite, and then having that be a whole experience that people can interact with, and then taking that same content and then implementing into YouTube and putting that into the traditional Web 2, which Chris, you were mentioning in terms of video. And so it's interesting that we're not quite there, like Chris was saying, but the fact that gaming is becoming that vehicle for so many different industries who want to get to that, because we already have a lot of the tools and mechanics. I mean, also the fact that there are even like Unreal Engine, that is a program and software that so many different industries use. The film industry even uses it for CGI and other components. So it's really interesting how we're in this kind of like strange metaverse space where it's like we don't really quite have all the technology or even the affordability in some shape and form for that tech for average consumers yet, but it's starting to be implemented in bits and pieces. And I honestly say gaming is going to be at the forefront when it comes to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel, the same way as well, in the sense that it's this evolution, right? So we saw Web 1.0 with text and photos, and Web 2.0 with video, social media. And then now we're evolving this movement to Web 3.0 with people wanting to be inside of this 3D metaverse and this, living the experience versus watching the experience. So it's very exciting. How do you each define the metaverse?
I mean, I would just define it as an immersive experience. I think that like when we discuss the metaverse and just seeing some of the other just all these different examples of it, I think it's just to actually immerse yourself into this digital and virtual experience, and get it to the point where literally when you're immersed in it, all of your senses are also activated in unison there. So it making it seem like you actually are there, even though you're not. I think that's kind of where everyone wants to go. I always use this movie and this book as a great example is Ready Player One. Everyone wants that experience to be that immersive metaverse situation that people can like literally put on a headset or get into some kind of equipment and be there. But now it's like, okay, how can we interact with just the whether it is VR headsets or whether it is just the screen that we have, but tapping into all of our senses as much as possible so that people can actually feel in it versus just outside looking in. I think is probably the best way that I could describe the metaverse.
In many ways, it's the evolution of the internet, right? And it's an internet that enables us to be within. But I would say that the defining kind of aspect of that is this sense of presence. Being present with people regardless of the distance, between you, and not only people, things as well. I like to think about it kind of philosophically as collapsing space and time. An example for AR, the ability to have an ancient artifact that you would never be able to touch in the real world, present in your space, is this collapsing of time, if you will. And for us to be on a holographic video call together or playing a game in a completely immersive environment is this collapsing of distance between us. So this notion of presence is really, I believe, foundational to what the metaverse will be. And then all kinds of experiences can be built on top of that. Gaming, shopping, learning, all
Music,
kinds
yeah,
of
everything.
everything for sure.
Mhm. Absolutely. Erin, I love what you mentioned about this aspect of being in it versus outside watching in. For me, for example, my experience, right? My first experience with Oculus, I talk about the fact that as a child, I watched this program on space exploration, which kind of changed my view of what was possible in the world. And I always felt like I wanted to know what it would be like to walk on the moon. But this was watching it on TV versus when I put on the Oculus and I was actually on the moon. And, I had this moment of, wow, now I know exactly what it feels like versus being outside watching an experience. And that's, some of the exciting things about the metaverse. So, Chris, for you in AR and then also with social media, where do you see the intersection of the metaverse with AR and then also with social media?
So AR is one of the foundational technologies that will enable the metaverse. We think a lot about how people can come into the metaverse. Right now, you come into the internet largely on a device that has a two-dimensional interface, and so what are the modes with which people are going to come into the metaverse? And two of them are undoubtedly going to be AR and VR.
Mhm.
And so from an AR standpoint, I think a lot about the kinds of experiences that AR technology can unlock that help create that sense of presence that I spoke about. So one example again is bringing objects into your physical space, 3D objects that aren't physically in your space, but being able to bring them into your space, and have an immersive or semi-immersive experience with them. I mean, we talk a lot about gaming, and Aaron can, I think, attest to this. It's the fact that gaming happens within a social context between people. That's what kind of brings the power to the experience. So we think, there's going to be a limitless number of social experiences that can be created. The last thing I'll say on just the role of social media, I believe that there's going to be an incredibly strong creator community that emerges, to generate all of the content in the metaverse, and a creator economy supporting it. And a lot of the foundations of that, some of the decentralization that you noted, Mary, a lot of the ways that creators are thinking about their art and their creativity and how ownership looks for them, all of these things into the future are kind of the norms for that are being experimented with today in social media. So that's another area where the social media environment kind of intersects with the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to get back to decentralization and how digital currencies are going to enable, the metaverse. But before that, Erin, what type of technologies do you think we're going to need in order for gaming to become more immersive?
One thing that we are actually starting to see, which is a little bit of a step in the direction, is whether it's with Unity, or utilizing the technology platforms as like Unreal Engine 5, we're starting to see even the graphical elements of video games are enhancing. And that graphical element actually helps more with that transition into 3D from 2D. But I have to say, we made such a big progress. I mean, gaming is actually a very young industry. It has not been around super, super long. So to go from 8-bit over into where we are now has been a bigger leap. I think that the more that we and specifically in gaming, the more that we utilize those technologies of Unity and Unreal Engine, and add more of those graphical elements that increases the 3D ability, it's going to make it better. I mean, now we're starting to see games where water actually moves and functions like water, or even the texture of people's hair and the way that sunlight in the game hits the hair and how it changes. That is actually the first necessary step before we even get to that immersive 3D experience, because you want to, like we're talking about, you want to feel like things are real in
Yeah.
whatever area of space that you're in. So that element of enhancing currently the model that we have from a graphical standpoint is going to be the first technology step that we need to make before we can even focus on, okay, how do we put them into this game, or how do we put it into this space? Because those elements of reality, and also elements of just even fluidity of functionality and motion are part of the reason why right now some people who are consumers and gamers aren't really into VR right now, is because it's not as fluid and it's not as quite immersive as we want it yet. So those are the necessary steps that I feel like from a technological standpoint that we'll have to get to before we even consider putting people in, or maybe in unison, but you still need to have those, CGI and graphical elements be as realistic as possible before you can even really think about, okay, how do we get them into it?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think a lot has improved too. And maybe people's view of where VR technology, for example, was like when we created Seek on the DK1, the way it looked, looking at it now versus, an experience that I was in on Oculus just this weekend. It's a massive difference. It's a massive leap. It looks so incredibly awesome. I did a workshop also on Oculus where it was so fluid, so I think that a lot of people probably still haven't come back from their experiences from where things were, but there's definitely been leaps, and we hope to see even more leaps happen for the graphics, as you said, especially when it comes to gaming, which is very high intensity, versus maybe if you're in an experience like a Seek watching a concert, which is more passive experience. So, we hope to continue to see a lot more of those advancements. So, Chris, in terms of AR, how do you see, the mechanics of that?
So, it's likely that there'll be a spectrum of devices that people utilize to interact with the metaverse. Surely, VR headsets and headsets generally that enable a completely immersive experience where you're, you know, fully transported into another environment will play a significant role, and there'll be a lot of experiences that we'll want to have in that way: concerts, performances, games, many experiences. Then there will also be a place for other types of hardware. I work on AR, so I think a lot about AR glasses and the role that AR glasses will play in enabling the metaverse, and the ability to have experiences where, again, you're transporting people and things across space and time, and visually enabling people to conjure content in the space that they are, is going to bring really powerful opportunities for the metaverse as well. And then, mobile is not going anywhere. Somebody shared a quote with me recently that was really powerful, which was, as a species, we don't move past technology, we build on top of it, right? Like, think about every technology that we have. There was a precursor that we built on top of. So I don't imagine that mobile devices are going anywhere. I think they'll just have a role that's kind of commensurate with this portfolio of devices that we have. And then, as Aaron noted, we haven't even touched on audio and all these kinds of other ways that we'll be able to interact with the world around us under this broad umbrella of the metaverse.
Mhm. Absolutely. So going back to decentralization, Erin, we see a lot of GameFi. I think that another hallmark of the metaverse is going to be decentralization. How do you see all of this unfolding first with, from your purview, Chris, and then also from your viewpoint, Erin?
So we're going to continue to invest in building products that support an infrastructure, if you will, a foundational infrastructure for the metaverse. So our CEO announced last week that we are bringing NFTs to Instagram in the future. I think that's an example of the kind of things that we'll do to support creators where they are, and again, building this infrastructure on which the metaverse can blossom.
Okay, awesome. Erin, where do you see the role of NFTs and also digital currencies in the work that you're doing and in gaming industry as a whole?
Well, so cryptocurrency is already starting to integrate itself into gaming already. There are some games that have more of a reward system that implements cryptocurrency. And there's also even some creators that are starting to evolve from that. I think one of the things that's happening right now in gaming is actually there's a lot of gaming consumers that do not embrace NFTs right now. A little bit of cryptocurrency, but mostly they're anti NFTs. I think part of the problem is, from my understanding from those I know who develop games, the understanding of game, like how people understand game development, is not really connecting to those who are integrating themselves into the NFT space. I think that in terms of cryptocurrency, that space is where I feel like it's being more implemented and probably will move a lot more quickly versus NFTs. And then I think another thing too is part of it is how do we battle some of the systemic issues that are plaguing creators to begin with. I think that no matter what we do, whether we have a decentralized format, whether we have NFTs, VR, AR, if we don't fix the systemic issues that are happening now in Web 2, it's going to be the same issue later on in Web 3. And part of that is education and information, and also resources as well. So I think that basically, the setup right now for gaming is that it's free to play, but you have to spend a lot of money on, costumes, specific DLCs, which is downloadable content, and so forth. I think that integrating cryptocurrency into that is going to definitely be beneficial, and also an opportunity for, like, okay, if you play a game, you can earn different currencies, right? But I think that personally for me, I think that NFT currently where it is, I understand the concept behind it and the ownership, and be able to have more of an authentication to your art or your projects or your pieces in the digital space. However, I think right now there's a disconnect in people understanding how game development actually works and figuring out how that can be implemented. So it's a very unique space that's happening right now, and it's changing over time. And I'm really excited for it because gaming is pretty much digital. And kind of like Chris, what you were mentioning in terms of mobile is actually one of the biggest areas for gaming, and actually one of the most underrated. Right now, what we're seeing in the gaming space is essentially it's not exclusivity anymore; it is accessibility. So people, like all these companies, whether it's Microsoft or any of them, they want so that you play and you have access to their games and titles, and you play anywhere on any platform at any time. So basically, be able to go from my computer, take a game from my computer, have my phone, play on my phone while I'm going somewhere, taking the subway. Also, having it be, okay, I'm at a friend's house. Oh, you want to play a game with each other? Oh, we can take the game that I already started, go to my friend's place, sign in. So that's kind of like what we're seeing in terms of overall gaming. And I think that everything we're talking about is going to be implemented in some shape or form. I just think that right now there's such a disconnect between how gaming is and just some of the tools and resources that we have in the Web3 space. I think people need to talk more with each other and work with each other more, I feel like, in order for it to be integrated a lot more. But it's going to happen because gaming is helping to drive the culture in so many different shapes and forms.
Yeah, absolutely. Could you touch a little bit on the systemic issues that you're referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see it right now in terms of social media. And I can speak more to for example, Black creators, right? There's a lot of different Black creators who are literally driving the culture. I always say Black creators are the backbone of the creator economy. A lot of the trends that are created are started by Black creators. There's actually studies that show that TikTok creators and Black content creators are paid less than their counterparts. Also, I think even when it comes to streaming for gaming on Twitch and YouTube, there are some amazing Black creators, but they're still battling with the issues of racism or even sexism on the digital platform. So a lot of the same societal issues that we see in real life are still implemented in the digital space. And then, I think another thing too is going back to resources and information. So there's also that socioeconomic part of it too. Because, even though we do have the internet and we have access to all information, if you don't know someone in the space, if you don't really have anyone around you that can help teach you it, you're not going to know where to go at all. I mean, even now, there is certain information like, okay, developing LLCs and basics of business, even content creators don't understand, don't know, or don't have access to, because some of these creators are very young. Like in the gaming space, there could be a creator who has millions of followers and they're only 18 years old. So it's like, how can we expect them to understand what they need to do, right? And so some of these problems that we're seeing right now, and when it comes to the overall creator economy, it's still going to be the same issues that we're going to see later on. So it's like, how can we best prepare all these different creators and prepare them to be able to increase different revenue sources, whether it is through the traditional currency standards of dollars or whatever their currency is, versus cryptocurrency, and how do they authenticate their art digitally so that people just don't steal it, and all these different things. I think that as we grow this environment, education and access are just going to be just as important as the technological advances that we're having.
Absolutely. You touch on a very good point, right? And I'm like sitting here super excited because that's actually the crux of what we do at Seek. Our mission is creating parity for all creators, no matter where they're located in the world. And you see a disproportionate amount of urban creators on our platform, and then also international creators. And it's because even when it comes to music, a lot of them have expressed to us that they get paid less for their streams because it's considered, like, if it's urban, it's usually considered not being brand friendly. But a different artist can have the same lyrics and the same content, if and even the same genre, but then because they look different, they will earn more and they're considered more brand friendly. And so for crypto, for example, being able to pay someone, let's say one Seek, for no matter what their genre is, then the smart contracts can also automatically make that payment. So we don't see, if that person is black, brown, green, it doesn't really matter. If the condition is met, then they're paid for their work. And so that's also what decentralization can do in terms of taking out some of these systemic biases. So that's definitely touching on a very, very key point. Chris, so what are you most excited about in terms of the metaverse and your work that you're doing with Meta and Web 3.0?
Yeah, well, I'm incredibly excited about a future in which I can be close to the people who are important to me, no matter where they are. And it sounds, frankly, kind of like a simple principle because it's what we all desire, right? But technology is just now catching up to enable that in ways that today, frankly, are going to feel pretty magical and like science fiction, but they're coming, and I'm excited about that. I talked about this idea of holographic communication, holograms, and just that sense of real presence with another human being in my space. Or similarly through avatars in a completely virtual environment. That feeling of being together, I think, is just something that is very powerful. I don't know if you all have played with Horizon World on the Quest, but it's an environment where you can share time with people within VR, and it's unquestionably the most powerful expression of presence I've had with technology. And I'm looking forward to more of that. And then, as I described earlier, this creator ecosystem, I'm very passionate about. I love the conversation around equity, parity, transparency, safety, all of those things, as Aaron noted, it's fundamental that they're baked in from the ground up. My hat goes off to you, Mary, and the work that you all are doing at Seek, because it sounds incredibly important towards ensuring that the internet of the future is more equitable, inclusive, et cetera, et cetera. So those are a couple of things I'm really excited about.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. What about you, Erin?
I'm really excited to see how the metaverse and decentralization, like how it's going to intertwine all the various industries and entertainment. I think right now we're starting to see not only the transformation of the gaming industry, it's always been mainstream, but it's being embraced on a whole different level here in the United States than ever before. And then now we're starting to see it's not only just like gaming by itself or music industry by itself or TV, they all are intermixing together. And so it actually, because of that, it's going to create a lot more opportunities for all the different sectors in entertainment, but also all the creators in the space as well. And I know that the two components of utilizing metaverse and cryptocurrencies and decentralization, like that's going to be a big play for how creatives will thrive and how they will develop, the next transformational games or TV programs or things like that. So I'm really excited to see how things will be reshaping and restructuring within the next 10 years.
Awesome. So, what's on the horizon for you, Erin?
Oh man, that's a good question. A lot. I do. I've been doing a lot of broadcasting and hosting work. There are some shows that are in the works that, unfortunately, I'm NDA'd out the wazoo, but I do have that. And then been working a lot with XSET to utilize our organization and our resources and information to assist with showcasing, highlighting so many different creators in the gaming esports space, and also very much supporting underserved communities like the blind community, Black community, women, and LGBTQ plus. We're very big on giving back and creating a more welcoming environment in gaming, because I know the digital space sometimes is not always welcoming because people can be anonymous. So we try to do our best to change the industry in what we can. And we're also keeping tabs on a lot of the different technology changes and advancements in gaming esports and figuring out ways to integrate that with our work and our talent. So those are some of the things that we have coming up. And I'm really excited for people to see even more. As Erin, the businesswoman, I'll be expanding beyond just what I do in the broadcasting and as an org owner.
Awesome. Awesome. Chris, what's on the horizon and what can we expect 5 years from now?
Well, I won't predict 5 years from now, but what I'll say is that there's a clear trajectory on is many of the things you spoke about earlier. The advancement of technologies that are going to enable richer, more immersive experiences. AR glasses, again, very close to my day to day. So that's one area. And smart glasses and wearable devices, generally speaking, that will enable us to have new kinds of relationships with the world around us, I think is where we're just going to continue to see tremendous strides being made in the short term. And I believe that, in the not too distant future, that we'll have the opportunity to utilize all these devices to have rich experiences that we probably couldn't even imagine today, which is why I'm dodging your 5 years.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Thank you all so much. I think that's all the time that we have. It's been an incredible panel. And, I urge everyone out there to buy a VR headset, try it out, look at all the esports, check out Aaron's company, check out Meta, Oculus, check out what they're doing in AR. For myself, I know that I went to a diversity event at then Facebook, right, at Meta, and I got a chance to experience the Oculus, and a whole new career was born for me in VR. That was the birth of Seek. So you just have to try it out. We're at a time where the rules are being written. It hasn't been written yet, and you can be a part of it. So just step out there into the metaverse and see what develops. Thank you all so much for being part of this panel.